I sold your car. 4 words. 4 words delivered through the tinny speaker of my phone with such casual, breathtaking cruelty that my mind refused, at first, to assemble them into a coherent thought. They hung in the air of the silent kitchen, a space that had become a mausoleum of memory in the 17 days since Richard's heart had simply stopped beating. Andrew, what was that? The line is crackling. What did you say? My own voice sounded alien, a high, thin thread of sound against the familiar, comforting hum of the refrigerator. It was a sound I knew intimately. Richard had spent a whole Saturday afternoon tinkering with it just 3 weeks before he died, his head buried in the back, humming along to the oldies station, his knuckles smudged with grease. He had fixed it. He had fixed everything. The Toyota, Mom. I sold it yesterday. There was no crackle this time. The words were clear, sharp, and edged with a satisfaction that felt like a physical blow. It coiled in my stomach, a cold, writhing snake of dread. I got a great price for it, $8,000. Pretty good for a 10-year-old car, you have to admit. I've already opened a new account and deposited the funds. I'll be managing your finances from now on. We need to be practical, now that Dad's gone. Practical. The word echoed in the cavernous space his absence had created. I gripped the cool, smooth marble of the countertop, my knuckles turning white. Richard and I had spent a month of weekends debating that countertop. He'd wanted granite, I'd wanted marble. We'd compromised on a slab that had a vein of gray running through it that he said looked like a lightning bolt. Just like the one that struck me when I first saw you, he'd whispered, his arms around my waist. Now, the stone felt cold as a tombstone beneath my fingers. I stared blankly at the faded floral wallpaper we'd hung together during our first year in this house, 26 years of sunlight gently bleaching the once vibrant roses. The Toyota had been Richard's pride, a testament to his belief in reliability and meticulous care. He'd called it our chariot, a dependable sedan that he maintained with the loving precision of a surgeon. He'd spent hours teaching me its inner workings, his patient hands guiding mine as he showed me how to check the oil, change a tire, recognize the subtle difference in the engine's purr that signaled a loose belt. So you'll never be stranded, Ev, he'd said, wiping a smudge of grease from my nose with his thumb. So no unscrupulous mechanic can ever take advantage of you. He wasn't just teaching me about cars, he was arming me for a world without him, a world I hadn't been ready to imagine. But I need that car, Andrew, I managed, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to keep the rising panic at bay. My job, the hospital is clear across town. The bus route is a nightmare from here. Andrew's sigh was a familiar weapon, a sharp exhalation of impatience that crackled through the phone. It was the sound he made when I couldn't figure out the new smart TV. The sound he made when I asked him to slow down while explaining a feature on my phone. It was the sound of my obsolescence. Mom, be realistic. You're 58. It's a physically demanding job. Should you even be working at your age? Think of this as a nudge toward a well-deserved retirement. Besides, the insurance, the gas, the maintenance, it's all too expensive for you to handle on your own. On my own. The 2 words hung in the air, foreign and brutal. For 35 years, it had been us. Richard and Evelyn. A team. Richard had been gone for exactly 17 days, 408 hours, and my son, the boy whose scraped knees I had kissed and whose homework I had supervised, was already treating me not as his grieving mother, but as an incompetent child, a line item on a balance sheet he now controlled. Look, he continued, his voice shifting into the brisk, efficient cadence he used for closing sales deals, a tone devoid of warmth or empathy. I've already researched the bus routes. It'll take you about an hour and 20 minutes each way, just one transfer. An earlier start to your day, sure, but the exercise will be good for you. Think of the steps you'll get in. He spoke as if he were conferring a great favor upon me. I'll text you the details. Gotta run, I have a meeting in 5. The line went dead before I could form a response. Before I could scream or cry or beg, I stood motionless in my hospital scrubs, the faint, sterile scent of antiseptic clinging to them. The kitchen counter was still cluttered with casserole dishes and sympathy cards, their well-meaning platitudes a stark contrast to the casual cruelty I had just experienced. The magnitude of what had just happened began to sink in, a slow, creeping flood of ice water through my veins. My son, my only child, had sold my car, my independence, my last tangible connection to Richard's care, without asking me, without even a word of warning. And he expected me to be grateful. My legs gave way, and I sank into a kitchen chair, the one where Richard always sat to read the paper. I could almost see him there, his brow furrowed in concentration, his glasses perched on the end of his nose. Richard would have known exactly what to say. He would have handled Andrew's breathtaking arrogance with a firm but gentle hand, a quiet authority that Andrew, for all his bluster, had never dared to challenge. Richard had always been the buffer, the steady presence that stood between our son's increasingly materialistic worldview and the simpler, more traditional values we had tried to instill in him. But Richard wasn't here anymore. The thought was a physical blow, a fresh wave of grief so powerful and suffocating that I had to press my palms to my eyes to hold back the sobs. When I could finally breathe again, my first instinct was to call Margaret. Margaret Rossi, Richard's oldest and dearest friend, our family attorney, a woman with a spine of steel and a heart of gold. If anyone would know what to do, it would be Margaret. But my finger hovered over her contact information on my phone's screen. What would I say? My grown son sold my car without my permission, and I don't know how to stand up to him. The humiliation burned hot in my chest, a bitter, shameful fire. I was a competent woman, a nurse who dealt with life and death, a mother, a wife. When had I become this person, this trembling, voiceless victim? Instead of calling, I set the phone down and walked to the living room window, the one that overlooked our modest driveway. The empty concrete rectangle where the Toyota had reliably sat for the past decade mocked me with its barrenness, a ghost of a car. Richard had always parked it at the perfect angle, exactly between the two cracks in the concrete, to make it easier for me to back out in the morning. Every small, thoughtful action was a fresh stab of pain. The practical implications of Andrew's actions began to cascade through my mind, a terrifying avalanche of logistics. My shift at the hospital started at 7 a.m. To arrive on time via the bus route Andrew had so helpfully researched would mean leaving the house by 5:30 a.m. at the latest. On the days I worked a late shift, I wouldn't get home until after 8 p.m. In the winter, both journeys would be in complete, unnerving darkness, waiting at bus stops on poorly lit streets. My stomach churned with a primal fear I hadn't felt in years. Then, another thought, sharp and electrifying, pierced through the fog of grief and panic, the car's title. Richard, my meticulous, plan for every contingency Richard, had been obsessive about paperwork. For our 30th anniversary, just a few years ago, he'd surprised me not with jewelry, but with a trip to the DMV. He had transferred the Toyota's title solely into my name. Just one less thing for you to worry about, my love, if anything ever happens to me, he'd said, his smile both loving and tinged with a sadness I hadn't understood at the time. Had Andrew even bothered to check the vehicle's registration before selling it? A flicker of hope, hot and fierce, ignited within me. Did he have any legal right to sell property that wasn't his? I rushed into the spare bedroom we used as an office, my heart pounding against my ribs. I pulled open the drawer of the old metal filing cabinet where Richard had kept all our important documents, his precise, block-lettered labels a testament to his orderly mind. The vehicle folder was missing. My hands began to shake as I searched more frantically, my initial hope curdling back into dread. I rifled through the neatly labeled sections: insurance, medical, house deed, warranties. The entire automotive section, from maintenance records to the original bill of sale, had been removed. Andrew, he must have taken the documents when he came by last week, ostensibly to help organize Dad's paperwork. I'd been grateful at the time, too overwhelmed with funeral arrangements and the sheer, crushing weight of my grief to question why he needed to take an entire folder of documents with him. He had hugged me, told me to rest, said he would handle the boring stuff. I had trusted him. I sank onto the edge of the guest bed, Richard's side of our bed in the next room still undisturbed, his reading glasses still on the nightstand where he'd left them. The magnitude of my son's betrayal expanded, a dark, oily stain spreading through my consciousness. This wasn't an impulsive, misguided attempt to help. This was calculated. He had deliberately taken the documents, sold a vehicle he had no legal right to sell, and had the audacity to frame it as a favor. My phone buzzed on the desk. A text message from Andrew. It was a screenshot of a complicated bus schedule, a spider web of routes and transfers. There were 3 transfers, not the single one he'd mentioned. A quick calculation showed the journey would actually take closer to 2 hours each way. The final line of his text read, "The exercise and fresh air will be good for you. We need to schedule a time to go through Dad's tools in the garage, too." I can probably get a decent price for them online. His tools. Richard's beloved, sacred tools. The tools he had collected over 40 years, some inherited from his own father. The tools he had used to teach neighborhood kids basic car maintenance every summer, his Grease Monkey Academy, he'd called it. The tools that were extensions of his skilled, capable, gentle hands. Something shifted inside me then. The profound, paralyzing grief transformed, its energy transmuting into something else, something I hadn't felt in a very long time, a cold, clear, diamond-hard anger. Richard would not have wanted me to suffer in silence, to be bullied and diminished. He would have expected me to stand up for myself, to fight back with the quiet strength he always insisted I possessed. I picked up my phone again. This time, there was no hesitation, no doubt. My finger pressed Margaret's name with a firm, decisive tap. "Margaret," I said when she answered, my voice no longer thin or high, but low and steady. "I need your help, and I need to know if there's any way to get into the Toyota's glove compartment without having the car." 40 minutes later, Margaret Rossi was pacing my small living room, the old floorboards creaking a rhythmic protest beneath her sensible leather shoes. Her silver hair was pulled back in its usual no-nonsense bun, a style that had not changed since I'd first met her in college. At 72, she still radiated a formidable energy, a sharp legal mind housed in a frame that crackled with righteous indignation. Richard had called her his moral compass and his legal bulldog. Right now, I needed the bulldog. He did what she demanded for the third time since I'd explained the situation, her voice rising with each repetition. She stopped pacing and fixed me with her piercing dark eyes. "Andrew sold your car? Without your permission, without even consulting you? Evelyn, that boy has lost his damn mind. He says he put the money in an account he set up for me," I explained, hearing how pathetic and passive it sounded, even as the words left my mouth. Margaret's eyes narrowed to slits. "An account you don't control, I'm guessing. One he has complete access to, under the guise of managing your finances." I nodded, the warmth of shame creeping up my neck. When had I become this person, this doormat that my own son felt comfortable walking all over? "Evelyn." Margaret's tone softened as she sat beside me on the sofa, the one we'd bought at a flea market and reupholstered ourselves. She took my hands in hers, they were cool and dry, a comforting anchor in my sea of turmoil. "This isn't just inappropriate, it's illegal. The Toyota was titled solely in your name. He had no more legal right to sell it than a stranger on the street. This is theft. Grand theft auto, to be precise." "He took all the car documents from Richard's filing cabinet," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "The whole folder. I think that's why I need to get into the glove compartment. Richard always kept duplicates of important papers there. A backup for the backup, he used to say." A small, sad smile played at the corners of Margaret's mouth. Richard. Always prepared for every contingency. It drove me crazy when we were on opposite sides of a debate, but it was what made him such a good mechanic, and an even better man. She squeezed my hands. "But there's something else you should know, Evelyn. Something Richard asked me not to tell you until it became absolutely necessary." A chill, unrelated to the evening air, ran through me. "What is it?" "Richard came to see me at my office about 3 months ago," she began gently. "He'd been having some chest pains, some shortness of breath." "What?" I interrupted, a fresh wave of grief and guilt washing over me. He had seemed a little more tired lately, but I had attributed it to him working too hard at the shop. "He never told me." "He didn't want to worry you," Margaret said, her voice full of a deep, shared sorrow. "You know how he was. Your protector. Always shielding everyone else. The doctor had given him some serious warnings about his heart. And Richard, being Richard, wanted to make sure everything was in perfect order, just in case." She opened her leather portfolio and removed a thick, sealed envelope. My name was written across it in Richard's familiar, precise, slightly slanted handwriting. "He asked me to give you this if anything happened to him," she explained. "And he gave me specific instructions. He said, "Maggie, if I'm gone," and Andrew starts. "Well," he said, "if Andrew starts behaving exactly as he is now, give her the letter immediately." My hands trembled as I took the envelope. It felt heavy, substantial, containing more than just a letter. It felt like it contained the weight of Richard's love and foresight. "Before you open that," Margaret continued, shifting back into lawyer mode, "we need to focus on the immediate problem. Getting your car back. Do you know who Andrew sold it to?" I shook my head, feeling helpless again. "He didn't say. Just that he got $8,000 for it." Margaret pulled out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. "What's the license plate number?" I recited it from memory. Richard had drilled it into me years ago, along with the VIN and our insurance policy number. "A prepared mind is a safe mind, Ev." Margaret typed rapidly, her brow furrowed in concentration. Then, a triumphant smile spread across her face. "I may be semi-retired, but I still have friends at the DMV who owe me favors. Let me make a call." While she stepped into the kitchen to use her phone, her voice a low, authoritative murmur, I sat holding Richard's envelope. I ran my fingers over the neat letters of my name, Evelyn. Even now, nearly 3 weeks after his death, discovering something new from him, a hidden message, felt like a lifeline thrown across the silent, gaping void that separated us. Margaret returned a few minutes later, looking pleased. "Good news. The car hasn't been re-registered yet. Whoever bought it hasn't completed the title transfer. That gives us a significant advantage." She sat beside me again. "The buyer is a Dr. Paul Mercer, a dentist in Boulder." She looked at me, her expression a mixture of sympathy and steely resolve. "Now, about that glove compartment. What exactly do you think is in there?" "I'm not sure," I admitted honestly. But Richard was methodical about backups. He always said the glove compartment was the heart of the car's history. "Well, we're going to get that car back," Margaret declared with the unshakable confidence that had made her such a formidable attorney. "But first, I think you should read what Richard wanted you to know." With a deep, shuddering breath, I carefully broke the seal on the envelope. Inside was a multi-page letter, and taped to the last page was a small, brass safe deposit box. KEY.MY Dearest Evelyn, if you're reading this, then 2 things I prayed would never happen have come to pass. I'm no longer with you, and our son has started making decisions he has no right to make. I've known for some time, my love, that Andrew has developed a set of values very different from ours. While we raised him to respect people for their character and kindness, he has chosen to measure worth only in dollars, appearances, and status. I fear he sees us, and our life, as something to be managed and upgraded, rather than cherished. I have prepared for this possibility. The key enclosed opens safe deposit box U2-247 at First National Bank on Broadway. Inside, you will find everything you need to understand what I've been building for us, for you, over the past 30 years. It will provide you with a level of security and independence you never knew you had, but there is something even more important, more time-sensitive, in the Toyota's glove compartment. Something Andrew must never find. It contains crucial, corroborating proof of everything, plus a secondary envelope you will need to take to Margaret immediately. It is my final failsafe. I am so sorry I kept these secrets from you, my love. My only reason was to protect you from worry and from the complexities of it all. I wanted to be sure every single piece was perfectly in place before I shared it with you. I thought I had more time. We were supposed to have more time. Know that every decision I ever made was out of a love for you so vast it filled my entire being. And know that I held on to hope for Andrew to eventually become the man we raised him to be, not the man he currently is. He is lost, Ev, and I fear he may try to pull you down with him. All my love, always and forever. Richard. I looked up at Margaret, tears blurring my vision, the letter shaking in my hand. What was he building? What secrets? Margaret's expression was gentle but determined. I think we need to get that car back to find out. And I have an idea how to do it. She pulled out her phone again. First, as your legal representative, I am going to report the vehicle as stolen, which, legally, it was. Then, I'm calling my grandson, Kevin. He works at the DMV and can give us the exact address for this Dr. Mercer. And he can put a flag on that VIN, making it impossible to register. Won't he get in trouble? Despite everything, the instinct to protect my son was a deep, painful reflex. Margaret gave me a level, unwavering look. Evelyn, Richard was my best friend for over 50 years. He spent his entire life making sure you were safe, loved, and taken care of. If Andrew has fundamentally interfered with that, then yes, he deserves whatever consequences come his way. It's time he learned that actions have them. As Margaret made her calls, her voice a low symphony of legal maneuvering, I reread Richard's letter. I traced his handwriting with my finger, hearing his voice in every carefully chosen word, in the familiar loop of his Y and the decisive cross of his T. Whatever was in that glove compartment, whatever Richard had been building for us, it was clearly something he felt would protect me after he was gone. And Andrew, in his arrogant blindness, had unknowingly sold it along with the car. By the time Margaret finished her calls, night had fallen outside, the lights of the city beginning to twinkle in the distance. She looked satisfied, a warrior preparing for a just battle. Good news, she announced, returning to the living room. The car was sold to Dr. Paul Mercer in Boulder. He bought it for his daughter as a college graduation present. It's still sitting in his garage. He won't be picking it up from the private cellar Andrew used until the weekend. She sat beside me, looking more energized than I'd seen her since before Richard's passing. We're going to Boulder first thing tomorrow morning. I've already left a message on Dr. Mercer's office voicemail, explaining the situation in broad strokes. What did you tell him? I asked, my voice still shaky. The truth. That the vehicle was sold illegally and without the consent of the legal, registered owner. I explained that my client's recently widowed status was exploited by a family member who exceeded their authority during a time of extreme grief. She patted my hand. Don't worry, Evelyn. I didn't throw Andrew completely under the bus. Not yet. I nodded, grateful for her tact, even as I struggled with the painful reality of my son's betrayal. Now, Margaret continued, her tone becoming brisk again. You need to get some rest. It's going to be a long day tomorrow. We retrieve your car, and we find out exactly what Richard was so determined to protect in that glove compartment. As she left, I stood in the doorway, watching her headlights disappear down the quiet street. For the first time since Richard's death, I felt something besides the crushing weight of grief stirring inside me. It was a tiny, fragile spark, but it was there, a quiet determination, a glimmer of the strength he had always seen in me, even when I couldn't see it myself. Whatever was in that glove compartment, whatever secrets Richard had kept, I knew one thing for certain. He had left me the tools to stand on my own against whatever came next. Even if that whatever turned out to be my own son, the drive to Boulder the next morning felt surreal. The rising sun cast long shadows across the plains, and the Rocky Mountains loomed ahead, a majestic, jagged promise on the horizon. Margaret insisted on driving her comfortable old Volvo, saying I looked too exhausted to be behind the wheel. I couldn't argue. I had barely slept, my mind racing with 1,000 questions, rereading Richard's letter in my head until the words blurred into a mantra of love and mystery. Did Richard ever mention any unusual investments to you, Evelyn? Margaret asked as we left the outskirts of Denver behind. Anything outside of his pension and our modest savings? Not really, I replied, my voice distant as I watched the familiar landscape roll by. He always handled our finances. He'd sit at the kitchen table every Sunday night, surrounded by papers, paying bills, balancing the checkbook. He called it manning the financial ship. I trusted him completely. I never paid much attention. I felt a flush of embarrassment at this admission. How could I have been so passive, so content to let Richard manage everything? It had felt like a partnership, but now it seemed like a dependency I hadn't even recognized. Margaret nodded thoughtfully. Richard was always more shrewd than people gave him credit for. Being a mechanic isn't just about fixing things, it's about understanding systems. How small, seemingly insignificant parts work together to create something powerful and functional. He applied that same logical thinking to everything he did, including money. The suburban sprawl of Denver gradually gave way to the more open, bohemian approach to Boulder. We navigated the streets until we found Dr. Mercer's address, an impressive, sprawling ranch house in a well-established neighborhood, the kind of place that spoke of old money and quiet prosperity. Dr. Paul Mercer was waiting for us in his driveway. He was a tall man in his early 60s, with kind eyes and a genuinely concerned expression. Beside him stood a young woman I assumed was his daughter, her arms crossed, looking distinctly uncomfortable in the bright morning sunlight. "Mrs. Winters," he greeted me, extending his hand. His handshake was firm and warm. "I am so terribly sorry about this entire situation. I got your attorney's message last night. Had I known the circumstances of the sale, I never would have purchased the vehicle." "Thank you for understanding," I replied, my voice thick with an emotion I couldn't name. "I hope this hasn't caused you and your daughter too much inconvenience." "Not at all," he assured me, though his daughter, Amber, let out a small, put-upon sigh. Amber was excited about the car, of course, but doing the right thing clearly takes precedence. "I've brought the necessary paperwork confirming Mrs. Winters' sole legal ownership," Margaret interjected, all business as she handed him a folder. "And a cashier's check for $8,000, the full amount you paid." Dr. Mercer glanced at the documents briefly, then pushed the check back toward Margaret. "Please, keep the money, Mrs. Winters. This was an illegal sale. I couldn't in good conscience accept payment for a vehicle that was essentially stolen from you." "Dad," his daughter protested, her voice a low whine. "It's a great car. We got a good deal." She fell silent at a stern but quiet look from her father. "Please," he continued, turning his attention back to me. "Consider it my contribution to setting things right. I lost my wife 3 years ago. I understand how vulnerable and disorienting that time can be. Some people, unfortunately, see that vulnerability as an opportunity." His unexpected kindness and understanding brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you," I managed to say, the words feeling inadequate. "The car's in the garage," he said, his voice gentle as he led us around the side of the house. I was impressed by its condition. Whoever maintained it did an exceptional job. "My husband," I said softly. "He was a mechanic. It was his pride and joy." Dr. Mercer nodded appreciatively as he pressed a button on the wall. The garage door glided open silently. And there it was. Our Toyota. Looking exactly as it had when it sat in our driveway for all those years, clean and unassuming and utterly reliable. The sight of it, this tangible, solid connection to Richard, made my heart clench with a painful mixture of relief and sorrow. "The keys," Dr. Mercer said, handing them to me. The simple metal felt impossibly heavy in my palm. Everything should be exactly as it was when I purchased it. I thanked him again, my voice thick with gratitude. After a few more formalities, guided by Margaret's legal expertise, we were back in the Toyota, heading toward Denver. I sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, my hands gripping the familiar worn leather of the steering wheel, breathing in the faint, lingering scent of Richard's aftershave and the peppermint gum he always kept in the console. "Are you going to open it?" Margaret asked softly from the passenger seat, nodding toward the glove compartment, and my hands trembled slightly as I reached out and pressed the button. The compartment door opened smoothly, revealing the neatly organized contents: the car's manual, registration documents that Andrew had missed, a small first aid kit, and a thick, sealed manila envelope. Written across it in Richard's bold, clear handwriting were 2 words, "For Evelyn, urgent." Should I? I hesitated, glancing at Margaret, then at the highway ahead. "Pull over," Margaret suggested, her voice firm. "Find the next rest stop. Whatever is in that envelope, you'll want to give it your full attention." I found a scenic overlook just outside the Boulder city limits and parked the car. The mountains provided a majestic, silent backdrop to this moment of truth. With a deep, shuddering breath, I tore open the envelope. Inside was a USB drive, another letter, and several folded legal documents that looked like property deeds. I unfolded the letter first, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Evelyn. If you're reading this, it means you got the car back. I knew you would. I knew you and Maggie would figure it out. Now for the truth I should have told you long ago. The enclosed USB drive contains complete, detailed records of everything I'm about to explain. The password is your name, the year we were married, and my last name. The short version is this: for the past 30 years, I have been investing in real estate throughout the Denver metropolitan area. What began as a small, opportunistic purchase with my first bonus from the auto shop has grown into something substantial. Very substantial. The properties are all held by a company, Winter Mechanics LLC. I established it decades ago, and it is registered solely in your name. You have been the legal owner of everything from day one, though I have managed it all. The portfolio currently includes 17 residential properties and 4 commercial buildings, including the Aspen Heights luxury apartment complex. Gasped, my hand flying to my mouth. I looked up at Margaret, my eyes wide with disbelief. Aspen Heights? Margaret, that's where Andrew lives. He brags about how exclusive it is. She nodded, her expression grim but unsurprised. Keep reading, Evelyn. Yes, my love. Our son has been paying $2,800 a month in rent to a company you own, without having the faintest idea. I never told him because I wanted him to make his own way in the world, not to rely on family connections for special treatment or handouts. I wanted him to learn the value of a dollar earned through his own hard work. The total portfolio value as of last month's assessment was approximately $4.7 million. The net monthly income, after all expenses, mortgages, and management fees are paid, is approximately $78,000. All of this is yours, Evelyn. It has always been yours. Everything is already in your name, legally and irrevocably. My attorney, Margaret, has all the necessary documentation at her office, but I kept these backups in the car, just in case Andrew tried to interfere or seize my office files after my death. I have seen how he looks at our house, at your car, at my tools, calculating their monetary value rather than appreciating their meaning. The management company that handles all the day-to-day operations is a firm called Reliable Properties. Ask for Susan Chen. She has been instructed for years that if something happened to me, she should expect a call from you. She will provide you with a full, transparent briefing. I am so sorry I kept this from you. I wanted to surprise you when I finally retired next year. We were going to travel, my love. Italy, Greece, the scholarship fund for young mechanics we always talked about. We were going to live the life we worked so hard for, with complete freedom. Remember how strong you are, my Evelyn. Remember how capable. You've always been the heart and soul of our family. Now you have the resources to live exactly as you choose, beholden to no one. All my love. Richard. I stared at the letter, reading it 3, 4, 5 times, the words swimming before my eyes. Our modest life, the careful budgeting, Richard's insistence on handling all the finances, it was all a front, a carefully constructed reality designed to shield me, and to allow him to build a multi-million-dollar real estate empire for us, for me. You knew, I said to Margaret, my voice choked with a storm of colliding emotions. It wasn't an accusation, but a statement of sudden, dawning understanding. She nodded, her expression full of a deep, sorrowful sympathy. I helped him set up the LLC legally, years ago. He swore me to secrecy. He said he would tell you when the time was right. She smiled sadly. Richard wanted to protect you, Evelyn. Not just from financial worry, but from Andrew's increasingly materialistic outlook. He saw it coming years ago, how Andrew might try to control you and your finances after he was gone. He built you a fortress. I looked down at the other documents in the envelope. Property deeds, bank account statements for the LLC, contact information for Susan Chen, all evidence of a secret life Richard had built in parallel to the one we shared openly. Why wouldn't he tell me? I whispered, the question a painful ache in my chest. Gratitude, confusion, grief, and a profound, bottomless love all warred within me. He wanted to handle all the complicated parts first, Margaret explained gently. He wanted to make it completely turnkey for you, so you wouldn't have to deal with the stress of the building and managing phase. And honestly, Evelyn, she added, her gaze direct, he worried you might let something slip to Andrew before everything was properly secured in a way he couldn't touch. He knew your heart, Ev. He knew you always try to see the best in our boy, even when he doesn't deserve it. The truth of this stung, but I couldn't deny it. I had always made excuses for Andrew's behavior, always tried to find the good intentions behind his selfish actions. All while Richard, with his clear-eyed realism, grew increasingly concerned about the man our son was becoming. What do I do now? I asked, feeling utterly overwhelmed by this new, dizzying reality. I was no longer a grieving widow with a modest pension. I was a real estate mogul. I was Andrew's landlord. Margaret's expression turned determined, the lawyer taking over from the friend. First, we drive directly to my office and secure these documents and that USB drive in my office safe. Then, you are going to call Susan Chen at Reliable Properties and introduce yourself as the active owner. And then, she added, a fierce gleam in her eye, we decide exactly how you want to handle Andrew. I looked out at the majestic, unyielding mountains, the same ones Richard and I had hiked so many times over our decades together. I felt his presence more strongly than at any moment since his death. He had built all of this for me, created a shield of security and independence I never knew I had. And Andrew, my son, had tried to send me on a 2-hour bus commute, selling my car without permission, planning to sell Richard's beloved tools for a quick buck. For the first time since Richard's death, the grief did not feel like a weight dragging me down. It felt like fuel. A quiet, steady strength began to fill the hollow spaces inside me, a clarity of purpose that would have made my husband proud. Let's go, I said, my voice clear and firm as I started the Toyota's engine. We have a lot of work to do.